Hey everybody, my name is Bradford and I have a question for you. Have you ever made a mistake? Have you ever made a regretful decision or choice? I know some are small and some are more painful than others, but today we're going to talk about failure. So here's your Wednesday word. Let's go. All right, so let's be real here. Let's be gut level, real, honest today. When I was 17 years old, I discovered that I was about to be a dad. That's right. When I was 17 years old in high school, like most of you, I discovered that I was going to be a dad and my world was shook. It was shaken because in my heart, I wanted to be a pastor. I wanted to love people. I wanted to serve God. And I had passion, ambitions, goals, dreams, wants, and desires, but yet my life was shaken because I had failed. I had failed God, I had failed my friends, I had failed my then girlfriend who is now my wife. Good news, yes, that's how the story ends. She becomes a wife and we have 4 more kids, okay? But the reality is that I thought that my life was over. I thought it was ended because I had failed God. And even up until this day, it is a failure that I still look back on and think, man, Bradford, how could you be so stupid? We've all have failed. We have all had made some disgusting, sinful decisions. And so today, I believe there's good news for those who feel like a failure. And so here are a few thoughts for those of you who feel like a failure. And one is this: failure is a fact. That's right, failure is a fact. Whether you believe it or not, failure is a part of life. It proves that you're human. It proves that you are a part of a sinful world. It is part of life. And some days you're gonna make some small failures, some days you're gonna make some big ones. But the reality is, don't be discouraged, don't be disheartened, don't give up, because it is part of being human. Another one is this: failure is not who you are. That's good news, is that failure is not who you are. And so many times we often think that what we did is who we are. And that is further from the truth. We are not what we did. We are not a mistake. What we did was a mistake. What we did was a failure, but we are not a failure. We are not a mistake. What we are is what God says we are. I don't care what you think. I don't care what you've said to yourself. What God says about you is the only thing that matters. And what He said about you is that you are not a failure. You are defined by His grace and by His forgiveness, not your failure. And oftentimes the enemy wants to make us believe that we are what we did, that we are our choices, that we are this and we are that, but that could be further from the truth. That is not the gospel. The gospel is that you are what Jesus did and what Jesus says and how Jesus defines who you are. And here's what Paul says in 1 Corinthians. Paul kind of talks about all these sinful things that people do. And so he says this: that is what some of you were, but you were washed, you were sanctified, you were justified in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ by the Spirit of God. That's who Jesus says you are. You are not a mistake. You are not a failure. You're exactly who God says you are. And number 3 is this: failure is not final. That's right, failure is not final. Do you know what is final? What's final is the cross. You know what's final is what God says about you. You know what's final is His grace. And when you realize that your failure is not final with God, God in His grace and His love and mercy takes away the sting of shame and disappointment. And He gives us new life and new chances and new passions and restored creativity and restored life. And that's what God has for you. God will never define you by your worst moment. God always defines you by His best moment. God defines you by the moment He created you. God defines you by the moment that He said to you, you are forgiven. And guess what? What He says about you is forever. What He says about you is eternal. And so what you did back in high school, what you did yesterday, what you did the week before, and what you did a few months ago, your failure is not final, because with God, there is always a second chance. We serve a God who can turn anything around. And if you're not dead, God's not done. There is still life in you. There is still purpose on you. You still have a dream. You still have vision, and God still has a plan for your life. Your failure is not final. Your failure is not who you are. And that is your Wednesday word.